Triton Junior Senior High School Student Council. On behalf of the whole Student Council, I welcome you all to our 2018 Veterans Day program. It is our privilege to recognize and honor the men and women of the United States military who have served the country bravely and submissively. Our country is safer and stronger thanks to their service. Before we begin, gentlemen are asked to remove their hats or lower their hoods. Also, please take a moment to completely silence your cell phones, or better yet, turn them off for the duration of the program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Haley Cooley, and I serve as a junior class representative on Student Council. At this time, the Honor Guard from American Legion Post 424 will present the colors. Please stand. You may be seated.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiffany Hughes, and I serve as a junior class representative on Student Council. Veterans Day is a U.S. legal holiday dedicated to American veterans of all wars. In 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, an armistice, or temporary cessation of hostilities, was declared between the Allied nations and Germany in World War I, then known as the Great War. Commemorated in many countries as Armistice Day, the following year, November 11th, became a federal holiday in the United States in 1938. In the aftermath of World War II and the Korean War, Armistice Day became known as Veterans Day. Triton students and staff, if you have a family member who has served in the United States military, either in the past or at present, please stand and be recognized. Thank you, and please be seated.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Anthony Stevens, and I serve as a junior class representative on the Student Council. We would now like to recognize our veterans. Please stand when I announce your branch of service so that we may express our thanks. The United States Army. The United States Marine Corps. The United States Navy. The United States Coast Guard. All family members here today with our veterans, please stand and be recognized for your faithfulness and sacrifice in supporting the United States military. Thank you. The United States Air Force. I'm a little slow this morning, sorry.
and I serve as a junior class representative on Student Council. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, retired Master Chief Stephen D. Beam, whose active and inactive duty with the United States Navy totals to 27 years and 4 months. Master Chief Beam served as a naval cryptologist. His tours of duty include Illinois, the Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam, Scotland, Italy, Virginia, Maryland, and aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. As a civilian, our speaker has served in law enforcement and public education, and he is currently an adjunct criminal justice professor at Ivy Tech Community College. Master Chief Beam has been married to his wife, Carol Ann Beam, for 52 years, and together they have 3 children, 13 great-grandchildren, 13 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren, with 4 more expected to arrive in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Master Chief Stephen D. Beam.
Okay, I just got to put these cheaters on. Had some cataracts removed, and they say all I need to do is have readers. And I can't get them to dangle on the end of my nose like most of those guys do that wear readers, so bear with me. What a privilege and an honor it is to be here. I think you're out there. Be here with the high school and the junior high. Public education. After I retired from the Navy, I became a school teacher. And I taught elementary, 4th and 5th graders, and then went on to teach 8th grade. Loved every minute of it, so it's special to be back here with you today. It's an honor for me. For almost 28 years, I had the honor and privilege of wearing the naval uniform and served my country as a naval cryptologist, both on land and at sea. And I'm particularly honored and privileged to be able to speak with you about a distinguished group of American, patriotic American citizens as we assemble here today to celebrate Veterans Day 2018. Today we pause to honor all veterans, not just those who have fought for us in battle, but in fact all of the outstanding men and women who served in our nation's armed forces since the founding of our nation more than 242 years ago. The diversity of men and women who served our nation's military are both young and old, rich and poor. They are from every race, creed, and religion. They are men and women who served and still serve our nation without concern for themselves. They come from cities and farms. They are dedicated to service and protection of our beloved nation. Many of them are still serving our country today while holding down full-time jobs. Some have endured great hardships, separation from family and drastically altered lifestyles. And let us not forget those who experienced the horrors of war. I'd like to share with you some of my experiences during my military career. As a young man just out of high school, I enlisted in the United States Navy. I attended boot camp at Great Lakes, Illinois, and after attending specialized schooling, I was deployed to the Philippines and later to Taiwan. During this time, letters from home were my only communication with family and friends. You do a lot of growing up when you are no longer at home with dad and mom to guide you. Next, I was stationed in Washington, D.C., where I met and married my wife, Carol. We moved from there to Fort George G. Meade, Maryland, for an advanced military school. In 1968, I received orders to Phu, South Vietnam. At that time, we had 1 child and another one on the way. Family could not accompany you to a war zone, so I had to leave my wife and child in Maryland until my return. Again, letters were our only means of communication during that time. You see, in 1968, none of the communication technology available today was available. No email, no Skype, no cell phones, no texting. Mail was all we had, and it was often very slow. In fact, we had to number our letters due to them getting out of order. Sometimes the mail got lost and never arrived. The hardest part of being in Vietnam was not being home for the birth of my second child and not being able to see her until she was 6 months old. Separation under those circumstances can be difficult for all family members. Additionally, long hours, family separations, and working during holidays are only a few of the sacrifices veterans have to make. In Vietnam, I worked 12-hour days, a minimum 12-hour days, 7 days a week during my whole tour duty. Was stationed aboard USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week during our 6-month deployment to the Mediterranean Sea. And during that period of deployment, we spent 134 days just drilling holes in the water without any port calls. No rest and relaxation. Very stressful environment. And while stationed in Italy, I worked 12, 14 hours a day, again 7 days a week during my first year there. And might add that military people do not get time and a half for overtime. Families also sacrifice even when a military member was stationed stateside. Work hours are still long, and too often holidays become standard work days for the military member. Regardless of the situations veterans face, they have all made sacrifices to ensure the freedoms we have today. Often their service did not end when they took off the uniform. A prime example is Marine Sergeant Clay South. He was just an ordinary young man joining the Marines. His mother even suggests that the Greenwood, Indiana native was rambunctious and stubborn and too much of a thrill seeker to settle for a 9-to-5 job. On Veterans Day in 2004, Sergeant Clay found himself on the wrong end of an Iraqi insurgent's AK-47 during the Second Battle of Fallujah. Injured severely in the face and leg, Clay also bore the brunt of a hand grenade. After years of painful therapy and more than 40 reconstructive surgeries and procedures, Clay now has a titanium jaw, 22 false teeth, and a constant numbness throughout his face. But his story doesn't end there, nor does his service to his country. You see, Clay now spends most of his time visiting fellow veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan in the military hospital wards. He delivers backpacks full of gifts such as iPods and portable Sony PlayStations, and he organizes regular outings for wounded warriors at local restaurants. In fact, Clay has now made helping his fellow warriors his life mission. He is founder and president of an organization called Veterans of Valor, a small group that has helped thousands of men and women who have shed blood for this country. Clay, an ordinary young man from Indiana, continues to accomplish extraordinary things. And Clay is not alone. Throughout our nation, military veterans are still serving our country by providing needed services to fellow veterans. They have unselfishly put the needs of others above their own. They have gone on to become lawyers and doctors, educators, businessmen and businesswomen, and even our government leaders. They continue to give back to the country they fought to defend. So many of them are unsung heroes. It would be a stretch of the imagination to believe that these extraordinary men and women and their accomplishments are a mere coincidence and not due to the discipline, motivational skills, calmness under pressure, and other leadership traits that are instilled in every man and woman that has served in the greatest military force on this earth. Francis Curry was an orphan who grew up in a foster home in upstate New York. Enlisting in the Army in 1943, 1 week after graduation from high school. And during the Battle of the Bulge, World War II, Sergeant Curry's unit was defending a strong point in Belgium. His platoon was forced to withdraw his position in favor of a nearby factory after German tanks advanced. Finding a bazooka in the building, Sergeant Curry crossed the street to secure rockets while enduring intense fire from enemy tanks and hostile infantrymen. Sergeant Curry and a companion knocked out a tank with one shot. Sergeant Curry and his fellow platoonmen were able to protect and save 5 trapped Americans pinned down by tank fire. And for his actions, Sergeant Curry, who was previously judged by his military superiors as too immature to be an officer, earned the Medal of Honor, the highest combat award our country can bestow on a member of the armed forces. President Ronald Reagan, while governor of California, introduced returning Vietnam prisoner of war John McCain at a speaking engagement in 1974, and he asked, "Where do we find such men?" He was speaking of so many veterans when he answered, "We find them in our streets, in the offices, the shops, and the working places of our country, and on the farms." In other words, President Reagan was referring to ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. Often when we speak of veterans, we only think of men. But let me be very clear. Women have always played an important role in the military, not just in the last few years. During World War II, women served both in Europe and the Pacific conflicts. They filled roles of not just administrative duties, but those of radio women, nurses, and many other important positions. They too were subject to injury, death, and capture, just like men. They suffered along with the military men during the Bataan Death March in the Philippines. If you ever get the opportunity, I would encourage you to read the book, We Were Soldiers Too, by Judy Barrett-Lidoff. Army Specialist Monica Brown was still a teenager when she went on a routine patrol as a medic in Afghanistan in 2007. She was called under insurgent fire, and she and her platoon sergeant ran a few hundred yards toward a burning Humvee. Dodging rounds by only inches, Specialist Brown helped pull injured soldiers from the vehicle and rendered life-saving first aid. And for her actions, she was awarded the Silver Star, the nation's 3rd highest combat decoration. Another example of women into combat is that of Army Chief Warrant Officer Lori Hill. While piloting her helicopter over Iraq in 2006, she maneuvered her chopper to draw enemy gunfire away from another helicopter and provide suppressive fire for troops on the ground. Despite flying a damaged aircraft and suffering injuries, she landed the helicopter safely, saving her crew. And for her actions, she became the first woman to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross. And while we're here to honor all those great men and women today, there is another special group that we don't hear enough about. These are the veterans who have died for this country long after they stopped wearing the military uniform. While their service obligations may have expired, their love of country endured. On September 12, 2012, 11 years and 1 day after the worst terrorist attack ever inflicted on American soil, 2 Navy SEAL veterans serving as part of a civilian security team made a supreme sacrifice while protecting their fellow Americans who were under attack at the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi, Libya. Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods knew the meaning of service. In an open letter to Glenn Doherty, SEAL Team 3 comrade Brandon Webb wrote in the New York Times, "I still can't believe you punched out early on me, but glad to hear from the guys that you fought like a hero." No surprise there. You should know your efforts resulted in the rescue of over 20 Department of State personnel. They are alive today because of yours and Ty's heroic action. It is America, not America's military, that Al-Qaeda and other terrorists have declared war on. But it is our armed forces that carry the great burden and responsibility of defending us. And fortunately, our military is made up of ordinary people who accomplish extraordinary things. You know, fewer than 10% of Americans can claim the title military veteran. And one received permission from the principal and the school superintendent to remove the desk. At each period, she asked the students to tell how they earned the desk. Some guess their good grades earned the desk. Good grades are important, Cawthorn told the students, but that answer wasn't right. Some said maybe it was their behavior. Not correct. By the afternoon, children had called their parents, and all 4 local TV news networks showed up to find out what was going on. By the final period, no one had guessed correctly. Cawthorn gathered all her students to give them the answer. She opened the door, and 27 U.S. veterans, all in uniforms, walked in with the desk, set them in rows, and stood against the wall. The teacher turned to the class and said, "You don't have to earn these desks. These heroes already did it for you." They went halfway around the world, giving up their education and interrupting their careers and families so you could have the freedom you have. No one charged you for your desk, but it wasn't really free. These guys bought it for you, and I hope you never forget it. As I said earlier, upon my retirement from the Navy, I became a school teacher. And how I wish that I would have done what Miss Cawthorn did, so that my 8th grade civics students, too, would not forget that the freedoms we enjoy today in this great country were earned for us by the United States veterans we honor today. In closing, I would like to encourage you to do the following. First, take a moment to speak to a veteran you know and tell them how much you appreciate the sacrifice they made to keep our nation free from tyranny and dictatorship. Second, when you see a veteran on the street, in a store, or at a community function, who is proudly wearing something associated with his or her military service, take a moment to say, "Thank you for your service." And lastly, the next time you see the American flag or hear our national anthem played, remember what they both stand for. The veterans we are honoring today are the men and women who made your freedom possible through their dedication to duty and service to our country. Thank you again for the honor to be here today. May God bless our military men and women today, wherever they serve. And may God bless our dedicated veterans throughout our country. And may God bless the United States of America.
On behalf of the Triton Student Council and Triton Junior Senior High School, we present this artwork to you with our thanks.
None is so easily recognizable or more stirring and able to render emotion than taps. Until the Civil War, the traditional call at day's end was a tune borrowed from the French called Lights Out. Then in the aftermath of the bloody 7 Days battles in July of 1862, and hard on the heels of losing 600 men and being wounded himself, Union General Daniel Adams Butterfield called the brigade bugler to his tent. He thought Lights Out was too formal and he wanted to honor his men with something different. Since 1862, taps has been played at military funerals, memorial services, and wreath-laying ceremonies to honor the sacrifice of current and fallen service members. Please remain seated during the playing of taps and as the colors are retired.
At this time, we would like to encourage the veterans and their family to remain seated so we can extend an additional thank you to you. We are going to begin dismissing students by section. You will be returning to your third period class for attendance. And we're going to start on the far side of your auditorium if you'd file out single file. Students, please. And finally, students on the close side can now stand and file out